Greetings, podcast listeners. On this episode today, episode 72, we are talking all about the all-important second part of manifestation, which is surrender, your most powerful point. Surrender, letting it go, going with the flow, stopping the fight, being like water. I share an experience, a powerful experience of surrender from my own life. And I also share words from my own teacher about this topic, and they are very powerful. So stay tuned all the way through, and thank you for listening. Enjoy the episode.
You are listening to Let's Get Metaphysical. This podcast explores the spiritual and metaphysical world through the experiences and opinions of the host and those interviewed. It should not necessarily be seen as direct endorsement or personal advice to our listeners. We encourage you to use your own discernment, judgment, and intuition regarding anything you learn from this show.
Let's get meta.
Welcome to Let's Get Metaphysical. I'm your host, Renata Maniaci, here to remind you that you are an infinite soul having a temporary human experience here on lovely planet Earth. In today's episode, we are going to carry on from our previous episode, that conversation about how manifestation works, to talk about a second very important step of manifestation, and that's all about surrender and letting it go. And we will get more into that in a moment. I just wanted to invite all of you listening to partake in the free gift that I have created for you all, the Let's Get Meta Master Clearing. You can claim this gift by going to letsgetmeta.com and clicking on Master Clearing. This is a full-on energy healing session that I have done with the intention of helping to remove any blocks to you going further into positive spirituality, positive metaphysics, and allow you to go deeper into these aspects with less blockages. I hope you enjoy it. We've gotten some incredible feedback and positive response so far. So check it out if you have any interest at all. And let us do an invocation for this episode. Masters and angels, I request your presence here with us for this episode. Please allow us all to know the truth, speak the truth, feel the truth, and be the truth. And let us all receive the clarity of how to manifest what we want and to surrender into acceptance of what it is that we need. Thank you with gratitude and full faith, plus creation. So are you ready? Let's get meta. Our last episode was all about how manifestation works. We talked about how we want to only ever focus on what we want and what we are calling in and that which we would like to have happen, and never on the negative aspects of that. We always want to focus on what we want. We also talked a bit about how you can express what you want to the universe through speaking it, writing it, drawing it, sharing it with people, building it with Legos, anything you want. But that making those 3D action steps, whatever it is for you, really amplifies your desires to the universe and says, this is what I want. We also talked about deservability, and we talked about one's individual karma and how all of those things come into alignment to manifest those things that you want at the exact divine right time. And if you have been trying and attempting to manifest something and it has not arrived in your life yet, It may not be the divine right time yet. And there is a second part to this manifestation. Maybe second is the wrong way to describe it, but a final step that we got to at the very end that I really want to dive a bit deeper in for this episode, and that is surrender. And in surrender, we're talking about letting it go and literally allowing acceptance of what is in this moment and in your moment, wherever you are, for whatever is happening in your life. And this is actually a really huge part of manifestation. You do all those things that we talked about. You ask for it, you write it, etc., etc. And then you must let it go. You must almost forget about it. And these two things are really closely tied together, letting it go and surrender. They're not exactly the same thing, but they are very close. You must let it go so that the universe can do its thing. And along with surrender implies a certain amount of acceptance and a certain amount of faith. Sometimes it is extremely hard to surrender. We're not so much in Western culture brought up to give up, so to speak. We would think of surrender as giving up, when it's not that at all. We've been taught incorrectly that surrender means to give up. Surrendering means to let go of your perceived control of a situation, any situation, and allow what is to be in the most divinely aligned way possible. Surrender is your most powerful point. And we don't learn this. We're not taught that surrender is a powerful place to be. We are taught that surrender is the opposite. We're taught that surrender is weak. And that couldn't be further from the truth. Have you ever experienced this? Have you ever had a situation in your life where just at that moment where you gave up the fight, whatever it was, you surrendered, you fully surrendered in whatever situation, and right then, or right after then, there was this immense clarity, this immense positive alignment of divine energy, this becoming exactly what you needed to be just at or after that moment of surrender. I know that some of you can resonate with what I'm saying because I can feel it as I'm speaking. That moment where you let go, and then something massive happened for your soul. It could have manifested physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. That moment of letting it go is so important. And it is a moment of surrender, and surrender is a place of power. It's a place of power. We need to rewrite any false programs around what we have been taught about surrender, and rewrite them so that it reads that surrender is actually incredibly powerful, an incredibly powerful place to be. I had a moment of surrender a few years ago. I was having a plant medicine ceremony, one of the few plant medicine ceremonies I've ever had. And my experience was that it was going wrong. I was feeling horrible. I felt like I was burning, literally burning on a funeral pyre. It felt like I was being burnt alive from the inside out. And I was scared because I was several hours away from the nearest hospital. And there was a moment where it got so intense that I literally thought that I was going to die. And a thought crossed my mind that I was so sorry to my mom for allowing this to happen to me. And then I let go because there was nothing else I could do. I just let go because I thought I was going to die. And in that moment, I let go. And that was the moment I shot up. And for me, what that looked like was I threw up a lot. But what I did was I threw up all of this stuff. And I don't know if any of you listening have had plant medicine ceremonies or any other kind of similar situation as this, but I could actually sense and feel and know what I was throwing up. And it was toxins, old toxins and old programs and old emotions and old resentments. I literally saw myself throwing up old birth control pills from years ago, decades ago, and vaccines from years ago, decades ago. The toxins in those things I was throwing up out of my body. I was purging. And it wasn't just those physical things. Like I said, it was also emotional, mental, spiritual. And it took that discomfort, that feeling of dying, that moment that took me to saying, okay, I let go. I give up. I can't do anything about this. That moment of surrender to actually get to the place that I needed to be, which was purging out negative energy, however it looked, however it came through for me. Doesn't matter, actually. It was that moment, and I had a huge healing, but it would not have happened before that moment of surrender. And I'm not advocating plant medicine ceremonies or anything like that. I'm just saying that this is a good example from my own life of that moment of surrender. And then immediately something big happened. It was like a switch flipped. And suddenly something happened and I was allowed to purge all of that negativity in all different levels, on all different levels, really. And what I'm sensing is that many of you are remembering similar moments. Might have nothing to do with plant medicine, but similar moments in your life of surrendering. For some of you, it might sound like or feel like hitting rock bottom. We've heard that a lot before, hitting rock bottom, whatever that might mean to you, because it's different for everybody, right? Depends on your life circumstance. It depends on what's going on for you karmically, all of it. Hitting rock bottom, and then boom, something switches, something shifts, and there's a massive change in you. Well, that's surrender. There's a part of that is surrender, and therein lies your most powerful state. Now, what does this have to do with manifestation? I'm describing surrender as a very important final part to the manifestation process. It is. But there's so much more to surrender than just talking about manifestation as well. So I wanted to explore this topic a bit. Letting it go. Expressing to the universe what it is that you want and need, and then surrendering it to the universe, to the divine, to your high self, to your higher power, is an incredibly powerful place to be. There's something that has to do with faith and acceptance in all of this. There is an energy of maybe first it's acceptance. If you can get to the point where you can be in full surrender On some level, you're accepting where you are at and saying, okay, this is where I'm at. And if you can do that, it's almost like the universe and the higher power and your high self want to reward you for that, for getting there, for accepting where you are, for surrendering into where you are, for letting go of whatever it was you're hanging on to, whether it's a relationship or a material possession or your own life in extreme cases. Letting that go and surrendering into whatever it is that will be, whatever it is that is most highly aligned for your life and your life path. On some level, you're saying, okay, I don't know better and I can't control this, so I'm letting it go. And it's massively, massively powerful. And the universe seems to want to reward us for doing that. And I've found that many times after that moment of surrender, whatever experience you have at that moment or just after it, helps to bring in faith. Faith that this is not all just chaos and coincidence, that this life actually has order and meaning and purpose. Whatever happens at that moment and just after that moment of surrender often leads to a growing, an exponential growing of faith, and knowing that you're not just dangling in the universe, floating around by yourself. In that moment of surrender, for me, of just saying, okay, I think I'm going to die. I can't do anything about it. There's nothing I can do. And then sitting up and throwing up, purging so much that they were showing me what I was purging. Even if that's not physically what came out, right? The images that I was given is, this is what I'm purging. And it was so much. That whole experience for me caused me to have so much faith, because it was like I finally was able to surrender to some point, and immediately I saw a huge result of that surrender, a huge bonus, a huge gift from that moment of surrender for me. And I've heard this over and over and over and over again for other people. And all the stories are different because we're all surrendering in different situations, in different ways. We're surrendering different things. But a lot of it has to do with control. A lot of it has to do with us surrendering our control, letting go of our control. And that's a scary thing for most people to do, because we do happen to live in a world where many of us grew up without faith, without a practice of faith, a practice of knowing that there's something greater that connects us all and is guiding us all, and a greater understanding that we do have a purpose here, that we do come here for a reason. We did incarnate to this planet for a reason. A lot of it's for our own individual growth as a soul. And a lot of it also is to help humanity in some way, big or small. I wanted to share with you something that my teacher says about surrender. And I typically wouldn't do this. I typically wouldn't share something that he said on a podcast episode, but today I just happened to be listening to an older workshop, and I knew I was going to be recording this episode. And it just so happened that in this workshop, he said a very poignant thing about surrender. So I'm going to play it for you now. It's just a minute. And excuse if the sound is not perfect. Here we go.
We've had many cases of late-stage cancers come back from the impossible when arrangements were being made for deaths. People found the switch inside them to surrender and let go and stop the fight. Every time you resist nature, you are less through the mind, through the actions, through the thoughts. Every time you think you know better, you dim every seed atom. Every seed atom that makes you up can be constrained through the awareness matrix that operates each particle. It either shuts it off, or you are in a state of rest and being, and you enliven and empower. That is your most powerful point. Surrender.
And I think by now, those of you who listen to this podcast know that I don't believe in coincidences. It is very divine that I came across that today. And not only that, it was, we were sitting around doing some other stuff, and we were kind of listening to this workshop with it on low, like could barely hear it in the background for a little bit. And then when we were ready to focus on it a bit more intently, I turned it up, and those were the lines that he was saying when I turned it up. So there's no coincidence there, and there's no surprise that today was the day I was going to record this episode, etc. So take that for however you want, but feel it with your heart. I really only try to share things with you on this podcast, especially this season and last season too, but especially this season. We have so much mistruth and falsehood in the world. And I'm not saying I know everything that's true and everything that's untrue, but I know that I don't want to be a perpetuator of anything that is untrue. That's not my role here in this lifetime. And bless everyone for having their role, whatever that is. But I do try to share things with you that are true, that I feel and know to be true. So take that for what you will. Surrender being your most powerful point. Stopping the fight, whatever fight that is. And you can feel fight. If you're like, I don't know, I'm not fighting anything. Great. If you're not fighting anything, beautiful. But if you can feel a struggle or a fight in any area of your life, maybe you can look at that. And maybe you can let go. Just let it go. Surrender. And see what happens. See what happens. And as for being this next part in the manifestation process, it's a really important part. And if you want to talk about it in terms of letting it go, maybe that makes more sense in terms of talking about manifestation. Announce to the universe whatever it is that you want. Do it as much as you can, as powerfully as you can, but then at some point, let it go. It's a huge part of the process. Try it. Let it go. Surrender. I'll just tune in now and see if anything else wants to come through on this topic before we end this episode. There are so many things right now that we are being asked to surrender in the world. So many things. It would take hours to name them all. Time with our families, traveling, even breathing freely. And we are going through a moment on this planet that is bringing us to our knees in many ways, many ways. This is a turning point in the Earth's history, and it is requiring a massive amount of surrender and acceptance on our parts. Maybe more than we've ever had collectively on a gross level on this planet. And we're doing wonderfully. We're doing wonderfully. We're getting there. And that's not coming from me. We are evolving. Things are happening. Negativity is being transmuted and transformed. The vibration of each individual on the planet is rising. Things are speeding up because they are going faster. The vibration is rising, as I said, so things are moving faster. And we get to be like water as much as we can and flow into exactly where we need to be without resistance, without fighting, without trying to grasp or hold control. And we get to allow that to happen with as much ease and grace as possible. I'm going to leave it there for today. Bless creation. Thank you so much for tuning in with me on this episode following our How Manifestation Works episode. This has been all about surrender, letting it go, stopping the fight. And I encourage you, wherever you feel comfortable in your life, or maybe even a little bit stretched, to let go. Maybe try it and see what happens. And as a reminder, don't forget to go and check out the Let's Get Meta Master Clearing at letsgetmeta.com. I hope you enjoy it. I'm going to leave it there for today. Thank you for listening. Stay positive, stay safe, and stay meta.
The Let's Get Metaphysical podcast is an Up, and Awaken production. Our intention is to raise the vibration of the planet by sharing, validating, and normalizing spiritual and metaphysical experiences. The show is produced and hosted by Renata Maniaci, co-creator of Up, and Awaken Productions, a platform devoted to creating conscious content to assist in the awakening currently taking place on this planet. If you want to see more from Up, and Awaken, please subscribe to the Up, and Awaken Productions channel on YouTube. If you're looking for more support in your awakening process, please consider becoming a member of our Up, and Awaken community on Patreon. Patrons in this community both give support to the conscious content that we create, like this podcast, and receive support in their awakening via the community's offerings, including courses, live group healings, and an interactive community. You can join the Up, and Awaken community by visiting patreon.com/Up, and Awaken. Subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss an episode. Give us a 5-star rating or write us a review on your podcast app. To learn more, visit our website at letsgetmeta.com. The Let's Get Meta podcast is almost entirely listener supported. If you love the show and want to support it, you can still become a patron of the podcast at patreon.com/Up, and Awaken. We appreciate all types of support. It helps keep this show going. Thank you for listening. Stay meta.
Let's get meta.
Metaphysical.
Let's get meta.
Metaphysical.
Let's get meta.
Metaphysical.
Let's get meta.
Metaphysical.